You gotta leave that gun right there.
Why?
Because you can't carry open.
Down. Don't move for the gun. Don't move for the gun.
I ain't touching my gun, man.
Put it on your head. Put it.
Do you know why it took an hour and 18 minutes approximately before you could take them out of handcuffs?
Once again, we had supervisors on scene. We were waiting for their command.
Okay. Who was that supervisor on scene?
As I advised, Sergeant Bulldog was on scene, as notified, and I believe Lieutenant Garcia.
Okay, so once Lieutenant Garcia showed up, Sergeant Baldock was no longer in charge.
Well, now it goes chain of command. Their sergeant, and then he's the commanding officer on scene.
Okay.
Lieutenant.
There were several. So once Lieutenant Garcia got there, you couldn't take cuffs off anybody without his approval, right?
Like I said, they were in charge. We were waiting for our order from our command staff.
I understand the chain of command, Officer Garcia, and all I'm asking you is it your understanding that once Lieutenant Garcia got there, you were not authorized to take handcuffs off anybody that was handcuffed without Lieutenant Garcia's okay?
Correct. He is the commanding officer on scene.
Okay, and before he got there, you weren't allowed to take handcuffs off anybody unless Sergeant Baldock said it was okay?
Correct.
At any point did you have begin to have any concern that y'all might have violated somebody's civil rights?
Objection to form.
Not at that time, no.
Okay.
We were just running through the process.
After the incident was over, did you do any research?
I can't remember if I did or didn't.
I don't want to ask about any questions you've had with any attorneys present. Did you do any type of after-action review with
I believe.
command? Hold on,
No,
finish.
sorry.
Did you do any type of after-action review with any command staff regarding this incident?
And with command staff? I believe they spoke about it the next day in roll call,
Okay.
to my recollection. And he spoke about the incident and everything. Now, and to your question, if I did research on my own after the incident, I looked it up.
Okay. Did anybody from command staff ever criticize any of your conduct or actions that day?
No, sir.
Did anybody from command staff indicate that the four of you or the group of other officers handled anything improperly or incorrectly that day?
My recollection, no.
Okay. Did any of that remedial training, well, that's a bad word, did any of the training you received after the incident tell you that you are not allowed to point a gun at somebody merely because they are carrying a firearm?
Objection to form of the question.
No, because like I said, you got to take into the total of circumstances. But for my safety,
Okay.
if someone has a firearm, yes, my firearm will be out.
Okay, so if somebody has a firearm, your firearm's coming out.
Yes, in the world we live in today.
Whether it's a legally carried firearm or not, your firearm's coming out.
Yes, for my safety and the safety of the citizens.
Is there, I'm just asking a question, it's an honest question, is there anything that you're aware of in Florida law that says an officer has some superior right to be armed over a citizen's right to be armed?
Repeat the question.
Is there any?
Oh,
Is there anything in Florida law that says you, the officer, have a right to be armed more so than a citizen has a right to be armed on a public pier?
Objection to form.
I believe we have to be armed. I just can't remember the statute at the top of my head.
So you think there is something in the law that
I believe
says
so, yes.
that? Okay. Do you know why it took as long as it did to find out whether or not these gentlemen were breaking any laws?
Once again, I don't know. We were waiting for our commands from our supervisors.
Once you had them in handcuffs and had the guns taken away from them, did you search through anybody's bags?
From my recollection,
You personally?
me personally, I don't believe so.
Did you see any other officers going through anybody's bags?
I can't remember, sir.
At some point, did you hear any directions given to look through coolers to see if there was anything else that y'all could find that these fishermen were doing illegally?
I can't remember if there was an order to look in the cooler.
Do you remember one of the people complaining almost immediately that his shoulder was injured?
Yes, I do remember one individual complaining of his shoulder.
Do you remember another individual complaining that his cuffs were uncomfortable and too tight?
I cannot remember that.
Okay. Did you ever hear any of your fellow officers make any derogatory comments about the fisherman?
No.
Did you hear anybody ask the fisherman, well, what did you expect, or words to that effect?
Well, they not in that type of line, but they were explained that due to the situation, that's why you're in, because we're pending our investigation in that line.
Okay. What crime, at the point where you walked out on that pier and drew your firearm, what crime did you believe was being committed?
Objection affirm.
The moment,
I'll back up. I'll rephrase the question. When you walked onto the pier and drew your firearm, did you believe that there was a crime being committed or about to be committed?
we don't know. That's the point, because we could say it can be committed because at the end of the day, due to the location, you have cruise ships. Not only, like I mentioned, I keep repeating the families and the beachgoers, you have cruise ships.
Do you understand that it is perfectly lawful for people in the state of Florida to carry guns even around families?
Yes.
Do you understand it's perfect? Do you understand that in the state of Florida?
Back to the form of the question.
She got you, Rob.
Thank you.
Do you understand that in the state of Florida, it is perfectly legal for individuals to have a firearm in a city park?
Objection to four.
In a city park?
Yes.
I believe there's provisions if you're carrying concealed.
Okay. What are those provisions?
If I'm not mistaken, schools, banks, shopping centers.
Somebody's told you that you can't carry a firearm as a...
No, excuse
okay.
me.
Sure, go ahead.
No, I know banks. I'm trying to work here. Banks, because there's a few. Banks. Schools. I believe, no, parts you can, if that's the answer, yes. And parts you can carry.
So you believe that banks and schools are places where...
Those are one of them. Those are some of them, yes.
You're just listing that those are...
No, the ones that come to my head, because I know there's a few.
So you believe it's illegal to carry in a bank even with a concealed carry license?
Well, I believe depends on what the Florida statute says.
Okay. Do you know if Florida statute says it's illegal to carry in a bank with a
I don't
concealed
remember
carry?
off the top of my head.
I didn't get your answer.
Sorry.
I mean your question.
Do you know if Florida statute says it's illegal to carry in a bank if you're otherwise lawfully carrying? Do you know?
I can't remember off the top of my head, sir.
Okay. You're not of anything that makes not aware of any law that makes a pier a prohibited place?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of anything in Florida law that says a place, rephrase. Are you aware of anything in Florida law that makes a place prohibited based on the fact that families are or may be gathered there?
Repeat the question?
You described to me there's a list of places in Florida statute where you cannot carry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a few. Schools, polling places, police stations. Those are all in the list of prohibited places, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of anything in that list of prohibited places, rather than defining things like those, that says it's a prohibited place because families might be gathered there?
Objection to four.
No. Okay. To my recollection from reading, no.
So the fact that families were out there does not in any way make the fact that they were carrying firearms out there illegal, right?
No.
So I'm going to ask the question again. When you drew your firearm, are you familiar with the term reasonable articulable suspicion?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Sorry. Yes.
Can you tell me what reasonable articulable suspicion is?
Reason to suspect.
Did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that any of those 5 individuals on the pier were committing a crime?
The time with the
Go ahead, you can answer the question.
The time with the information gathering, no, but at the end of the day, we're taking everything into circumstance.
Okay.
Like I had stated previously.
Sure. Well, you don't have to expound on every question I asked you. If you want to just answer the question, that's fine by
I
me.
know.
Excuse me. Last time I looked, I was your attorney. So any instructions that are given to you are given to you by me.
Fair enough.
So if he gives you an instruction, you're not to follow that. And that was a statement that should not have been made.
Okay, fair
Fair
enough. So Officer Garcia, you are aware of the concept of reasonable articulable suspicion.
Yes.
You just defined it, as you understand it. What reasonable articulable suspicion did you have of a crime being committed when you drew your firearm?
Once again, at the time, no. But we're taking everything into consideration.
Did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that some crime was about to be committed?
Could happen? Yes.
Okay. Not could happen.
But it was about to be committed.
My question is, did you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime was about to be committed?
Correct, yes.
Did you have one?
At the time, with the statements given to us by the park ranger and the dispatch, could be, yes.
Okay. What crime did you believe was about to be committed?
Being with a state can be a terrorist act.
Okay. So you believe you had a reasonable articulable suspicion.
Did you say form?
Did you say form, Rob?
No.
Okay.
Oops.
So when you drew your gun, you believed you had a reasonable articulable suspicion that a terrorist incident was about to occur.
Yes.
Okay. And so walk me through, slowly please, for the court reporter and for me to write notes, if that's an okay instruction. Can you walk me through every factor that went into your reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime of terrorism was about to be committed?
Objection to form.
Once again, I stated the information given from the park ranger with the men not complying with
Okay, hold
firearms.
on, just give me
Sorry.
that so I can get it down. Info from the park ranger.
Yes. The dispatch info of men casing.
Okay.
Location being that cruise ships with tourists pass by.
Okay.
Those are the things that ran through my head.
Anything else?
I would say also the families in the park and the beachgoers. Mind you, in past, even though it didn't happen here, it happened across seas. A man walked up and down a beach with a rifle and decided to shoot people. And that was considered a terrorist act.
Okay.
Those are many options that ran through our head also.
If eyes could tell the truth.
I'm going to object to this entire series of questions. Simply fishing under the statute does not vitiate the crime of open carry.
And number two, your legal opinion is not my concern right now about what the law does or doesn't say. I'm asking the officer a question.
You keep representing to him what a Florida statute says, and you're telling him something that's not true. So if you want to keep misquoting the law, you go ahead, but I'm going to make an objection to it.
This is why they need to get rid of qualified immunity really fast.
We're back on the video record at 2:45 p.m.
Sergeant Baldock, whose decision was it to approach these individuals in this tactical formation?
Before, to the best of my recollection, we talked about how we're going to approach these gentlemen before we got on the pier, and we all came to the agreement, we're going to approach tactically with our weapons drawn, safely securing each one, and then once they're secure, started the investigation, figuring out what's going on, why are these guys here, see if everything checks out.
At the time you walked onto that pier, had you been given any information by any person that these individuals had made an aggressive move towards anybody?
No.
At the time you walked onto that pier, had you been given any information by any person that these people were in the act of committing a criminal offense?
No. Other than open carry.
Okay. Which you now know wasn't even a crime.
Correct.
Objection to the form of the question.
With
Object to the form of the question.
with the exception
Take a breath in between, so let us
Gotcha.
object.
with the exception of the fishing or hunting.
So it's your understanding that open carry is a crime unless you are hunting, fishing, or camping.
Correct.
So open carry is also a crime unless you are a law enforcement officer.
Correct.
Okay. So equal weight, right there in the same statute, right?
Correct.
So it's not really an exception as much as it is the law of the state of Florida, right?
Objection
Correct.
of form of the question.
The form of the question.
So the fact that you believed they were committing the crime of open carry when you walked out there was more about your lack of legal knowledge and lack of your knowledge of Florida law, and not the fact that they were committing a crime, right?
Objection in the form of the question, argumentative.
The form of the question, he wasn't wrong. He was right about the law.
You can answer.
Okay, repeat the question.
You did not have knowledge that fishing allowed them to openly carry at that time, correct?
Objection in the form of the question.
Object to the form of the question.
You can
At
answer.
that time, my top priority was officer safety and safety of the public.
Not the question I asked, sir. Madam Court Reporter, can you read the question back?
Question, you did not have knowledge that fishing allowed them to openly carry at that time.
I'm going to object to this entire series of questions. Simply fishing under the statute does not vitiate the crime of open carry. There are numerous other elements.
Mr. Rosenwald, that is, number one, a speaking objection, which we know how Mr. Switkus feels about that. And number two, your legal opinion is not my concern right now about what the law does or doesn't say. I'm asking the officer a question.
Well, what my concern is that you keep representing to him what a Florida statute says, and you're telling him something that's not true. So if you want to keep misquoting the law, you go ahead, but I'm going to make an objection to it.
Okay. So, officer, you now understand that it is not a crime to have an open carried firearm while fishing, right?
Objection in the form of the question.
Form,
I understand that, yes.
Okay. But that was not your understanding on the day of this incident, was it?
form,
Join.
You can answer.
My understanding at that moment was that they were open carrying.
And that they were violating the law by doing so.
Correct.
Objection in the form.